All right, we got it now. Yeah. So what we usually do is we start off the session with the soul stirring. Okay. Okay. Sorry, my computer's in German, so I'm just reading the instructions in German as well. Yeah. So what we usually do is we start the session with a soul stirring element. And the soul stirring element can be, either a song, it can be a book, it can be an article, or it can be an experience that you had recently, just something that basically moved your soul. And we are collecting the soul stirring elements in a Google Doc, which we're going to share also in the chat. So for today, I'm going to share my soul stirring element is actually it's a YouTube yoga series that I've been doing together. It's called the Divine Feminine Yoga, and it's been very cathartic for me. That at the end of the sessions, I really feel a certain release, also just being channeled out of me. And I'll share that in the in the chat as well. Yeah, but what we're going to do now is we're going to start with a grounding session. And I'm going to lead you through this particular grounding exercise that we're going to do. It's going to be about maximum 1.5 minutes. And so I'm just going to ask you to get comfortable, and feel free to turn off your camera if you want to do that, or you can keep it on. Yeah. So I invite you to find a relaxed and comfortable position. And you could be seated on a chair or on the floor or on a cushion. Just keep your back upright, but not too tight. And rest your hands where they feel comfortable. Allow your shoulders just to drop and loosen your jaw. And try to notice the shape of your body, the weight, and let yourself relax and just get curious about your body and where you're sitting, the sensations that you're experiencing, the touch, the connection with the floor or with the chair, and relax any areas of tightness or tension. And just breathe. Just feel the natural flow of your breath in, out. You don't need to do anything to your breath. Not long, not short, just natural. And notice where you feel the breath in your body. It might be in your chest, or it might be in your stomach, or even in your nostrils. And see if you can feel the sensations of breath, just one breath at a time. When one breath ends, another breath begins. As you do this, you might notice that your mind may start to wander. You may start thinking about other things. If this happens, it's not a problem. It's very natural. Just notice that your mind has wandered, and you can say, thinking or wondering in your head softly, and then gently redirect your attention back to the breathing. Stay here for a couple more seconds, just noticing your breath in silence. From time to time, you'll get lost in thought, then return to your breath. And now it's time to gently reawaken your body and your mind. And just keep your eyes closed. Notice the sounds around you. Feel the floor beneath you, the clothes on your body. You can start by wiggling your fingers and your toes. And you can open your eyes, stretch your arms and legs gently. And welcome back. Yeah. Thank you for being part of that. So we are going to post in the chat an introduction. We'd like you to let us know who you are and where in the world you're joining us from. And also for the soul stirring element, what's a piece of performance music that has stirred your soul recently? So our aims for this session today is essentially to connect and build a community where we all feel supported in bringing about change as far as narrative work is concerned. And we also want to continue exploring how creativity can be a source of individual and collective healing, and how, our imagination can also help to shape your leadership. So we're going to be harvesting and sharing some of the wisdom and knowledge and practical steps within the group about how we can shift the global dev narratives from charity to solidarity. So a few ideas that guide us as a group is that we're here to learn and not necessarily to criticize. We have something to gain by interacting with one another. And this is a brave, but not necessarily a safe space. So we're willing, when we choose to come here, we're willing to be challenged, to be pushed outside of our comfort zones. And all our activities are basically opt-in, opt-out basis. And we aim to seek permission rather than assume that everyone wants to take part. So always remember, I, not we. It's important not to generalize or assume a universal lived experience. Yes, and with that, I have the privilege of introducing our guest, Onyango Otieno, or as we call him in Kenya, Rix the Poet. Rix and I have not met in person, but we connected about, my gosh, I think it's about a year ago on Instagram the first time. And it's a connection that's felt very natural. It's like we almost know each other, and he happens to know also people in my circle who I haven't even gotten in touch with in a long time. So I'm really, really excited that, we made this happen. And I'm just going to say a few words about Rix, who is an all-round amazing person, an amazing human being, in all the work that he's doing, particularly when it comes to mental health and masculinity in Kenya. But he wears many hats. I mean, he's a trauma coach, he's a writer, he's a poet, he's a mental health advocate, he's a podcaster, and he's a healthy masculinity ambassador as well. So Rix's work basically centers on African masculinity and its role in ensuring gender equality and equity, especially championing African men's involvement in sexual and reproductive health rights. He's been a facilitator of trauma healing circles, and he manages also a safe space for African boys and men who've been raped or sexually abused. And he also founded a 200-member mental health online support group where members utilize storytelling as a tool for tackling mental illness, stigma. And he also hosts his own podcast called the Afro Masculinity Podcast, where he interrogates, the complexities of African masculinities. And he also manages a male support group for healthy masculinity with 150 members. And alongside the work of healing that he does, he's also a co-founder of Fatuma's Voice. And we're going to learn more about Fatuma's Voice through Rix. And Fatuma's Voice is basically a forum that uses debate, open dialogue, and other creative tools to encourage expression, picturing towards an inclusive and politically conscious Africa, basically doing the work of dismantling false narratives. And he's been working with different community members also towards this social change. And Rix is also a co-founder of Skills and Kinks, which is a space that I used to really, really enjoy the discussions. And it's basically a safe sex space for the African community, but it's open to everyone that does weekly Instagram lives. I think they're on a break right now, but there's a lot that they have covered in the past, if that is also something that you're interested in. And he is really just an amazing human being, and it's such a joy to have you, Rix, with us today. So karibu sana, for those ones who do not understand that, karibu sana means you're very welcome in Kiswahili. Yeah, so Rick, we're gonna kick off, and I mean, you wear so many hats. Can you tell us, how do you structure your day so that you're able to, do the different things that you're involved in?
I view my life more as play than work. So I'm playing every day with the time I have, because I think from the kind of upbringing I had, um, my childhood was robbed from me at a certain point, and then I was forced to grow up so quickly. So when I wanted to get my power back, I said, I'm not going to be like every other human being who goes to work. I'm going to play for the rest of my life. So things just work out. I mean, it's a crazy, busy life, but I find time for my friends. I find time for myself. A day like today, actually, we had I postponed, like some 2 sessions are postponed, for therapy sessions are postponed with clients. I had a crazy day yesterday. So today I've just been home with myself, just, watching cartoons and, dancing a lot. The funny thing I'm going to tell you, Joanne, about the song that you played actually just before when we started, took me back to when I was 6 years old. When I was young, that's the kind of music my father would play at home. So he would put me on our living room table, and he would tell me to dance for him. And that was the music that would play. So it was Lingala, Sukus, and pretty much that's how we bonded. So growing up, when our relationship started changing, it became one of the missing pieces that I missed most from him. Just sitting down, watching music with him, or dancing for him. So many times I equate my love for my father or our intimacy with him as dancing for him. So thank you for the songs.
Oh, I'm glad that it reawakened that part of you, and that good memory that you also shared with your father. Because I'm very aware also of the history that you had with your father, based on the stories that you have vulnerably shared with us. And we can get into that later on. But I'm glad that it captured that precious memory that you have of him as well. Yeah, so it really sounds like I definitely appreciate, the play element, because I think then there's a certain lightness that comes also with everything that you have to do, that, you're kind of moving from a different sort of form of play. And I'm just wondering, in the different roles that you, that you play, how do you think this is enriching, the storytelling and the communication work that you do, because you're also a communication manager? How do you
Right,
think that informs it, it enriches your comms work?
right. First of all, I really think the true nature of a nation is in the nature of its stories, and people tell stories in all sorts of forms, from gossip to what's happening in the radio to the forwards on WhatsApp groups. All those are forms of storytelling, to whatever's trending on Twitter, in your country today, to the kind of things that are happening in your dreams, to the music that we are listening to every single day in our lives. And growing up in the kind of environment I did, um, many of the stories were very defeating, because every other day it seemed as though pain was what was normal, and pain and dissociation was what was normal, and anger and disorientation, and then there were just pockets of joy and happiness and laughter here and there, but they never really lasted. So stability felt more as a demeaning experience for most parts. But then my little child intelligence would tell me there must be another life, you know? there must be another life. And I don't know where I got that from. I can't explain it, because people ask me all the time, how did you get out of it? Because most people don't, you know. But I just really felt, I remember telling myself, I think when I was probably 17, that one day when I grow older, I am going to look for peace. And if I don't find peace, I'll create it, you know. So I'm growing up, and the narratives that are around me, they're not after making me grow or helping me grow. And I'm like, I felt I had so much to give the world, especially the world around me, with how we saw ourselves as people. And I felt with my poetry, I could get to somebody. With my skills with people, I could create communities. With my experience with my own trauma and the training I've had, I could help others be more self-aware, and they could tell different narratives about themselves, you know? So it sort of works in like 360 degrees, because in the little ripples I'm creating with the different giftings that I have, I mean, there's been tremendous growth first within me, and the people around me, and the people who come across my energy, the likes of you, who we met online and, you know, never really met face to face. And, you know, like for me, it goes down generations. And one of the most powerful things about that is, for example, my name Onyango belongs to my paternal grandfather, who suffered a lot of PTSD because he fought in the Second World War in Burma for the British. And as it happened with the many African soldiers who fought for the colonialists, they were just bundled back to their villages, and nobody knew what PTSD was. Now, my grandfather was a polygamous man with 3 wives and 30 children. Our village was a small city. I have cousins whose names I don't know, man. Like, we're so many, you know? And so this man was also, you know, as his coping mechanisms, because of whatever was happening in his brain, he over depended on alcohol, and he also grew to be very violent, okay? So that was a chaotic place to be. People are always anxious, and you know, he'd beat up his wives in front of his kids, and all these sorts of things. And so he died with a lot of pain, a pain he never understood. So I dropped my English name, and I wanted to be known by his name, because I am healing his blood. I am healing his spirit, you know? And I said, this one, it ends with me. All right. And that has been very powerful even across my cousins, because I mean, they see me on TV, they see me in the newspapers, I'm on all these blogs and YouTube and radio stations, because I want us to reimagine ourselves differently. We are not what we were told we are supposed to be. We can choose who we want to become. And so in all my work, I am actually just telling people you can choose who you want to become. You don't have to die on the story of what this world has worked so hard to make you to be, right? And so that then means that you're first connecting with your inner senses, you know, and then for you to understand what is without you, you have to connect with within you, right? And essentially then that has a ripple effect on how you connect to other people.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really powerful, Rix. Thanks for sharing that. And I really like that you're also bringing the personal into your professional life, because very often in this work, particularly in international development, it's almost encouraged that, you know, you should sort of separate and leave that, but, you know, we're all one. But I'm really interested in kind of sort of going deeper when you talk about, you know, the healing that you have undertaken. How do you think that sort of manifests in the communications work that you do? Like, what are some of the things that, you know, you notice you are very intentional about doing differently?
Right. The first thing is empathy. Man, like a lot of our workplaces, people are very detached from one another because of what capitalist environments have created. So we are always suspicious of one another, and suspicion creates distance, and distance encourages dehumanization, right? And so we are coming to work, we are working for the same goals, but we are not connecting. It doesn't make sense to me at all, right? And so, Jennifer has come to work, Joanne has come to work, Louise has come to work, but they're not really talking. It's just we are very distant and detached from one another. And then the hierarchy with which our workplaces operate in. So you find, there's a lot of mistreatment because somebody is the boss of another person, and the middle person is also the boss of the person below them, and goes and, all that. And that ladder as well, when you're looking up and you're feeling like the people who are above you are more human than you are, and that is how they make you feel. I don't think that is okay. I don't think it's a sustainable way of living in this world, and especially in the imagination of what we think development should be. For me, I think development on Earth can never be sustainable if it does not first develop the human, because it is we who make development work. It is we. So the human resource has to have lots and lots of investment, in our wellness, right? The first point of wellness or investment in wellness needs to be for the human, yeah. And if that is not centered, then development will just be a shell. Today, for example, Nairobi, we are still a developing city. All these tall skyscrapers are coming up every single day, but the city is still like, it feels blue, because people are running every day all the time, and they're rushing, and to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. Before you know it, you're 60 years old, you don't know where your life went. Right? And so that's the kind of thing I'm encouraging. Like, if we could just be more empathetic with one another. You can't be expected, Joanne, to come to work and you're 100% every day. Every day you're expected to be 100%. For example, if you're a woman, and I mean, you do have some slow days, maybe because you're going through your monthly periods, workplaces do not give room for that. Like, for you to slow down a little bit, there is nothing, and so for me, empathy has to be the biggest thing. And then the other would be connection. And of course, empathy would lead me to connection, right? Because if I'm in a space where I feel validated, my existence is validated, my experience is validated, then my nervous system would feel safe to connect, right? And so now I do not have to pretend or to perform to be who I'm not, just because I need acceptance in this kind of space for me to produce, or for me to feel like I can be productive. Yeah. So, and these are just, they are human skills, which for most parts we think are supposed to, for most parts we think of them as feelings only. Yeah, that you must feel empathetic. And so that is the way. So when you don't feel empathetic, we don't know what to do. We go to the other extreme of being unkind. But if we thought of them more as skills, as patience as a skill, emotional intelligence as a skill, empathy as a skill. And then that means we would study what these things look like, and we would study ourselves in them, and figure out sustainable ways to practice them in a way that would create harmony within and around our spaces.
Nice, wonderful. I think it's a good time to go in the direction of Fatuma's voice, because I assume that this is sort of a physical embodiment of exactly what you're talking about. Can you tell us a little bit about Fatuma's voice? What is it? Why was it founded? And I'll ask a few more questions after it.
The story is funny because I was dropping out of campus, and I wanted, one of my biggest dreams when I was 17, I wanted to be a journalist, actually. And at the time, I felt really lost at 16. There was so much chaos at home, like with physical violence that my mom and dad, they were fighting all the time. And my dad was also very physically violent to me. I was suicidal. I was running away from home. I was chased from school. There was so much going on. And so I remember being at home for these long periods of time. And I read a lot of newspapers and I was listening to radio all the time. And at the time, I had a liking for languages. So I was very good in Swahili. My English was not the best, but I could communicate, And so one day I'm walking at home and I come across this pamphlet that belongs to a university that offered mass communication, which is Daystar University, John. And I didn't know where we stayed, that the university wasn't so far away from home. And so I plant that seed and I start writing everywhere, like on my shirts, in my books, on my bed, that I am a journalist, I am a journalist, I am a journalist, everywhere, everywhere. And so I finish high school and then, I go to Uganda, I do my advanced level education there, I come back to Kenya, I joined Daystar University. Then in that period of joining the university, there's a lot of family instability. My parents are still fighting. I had to drop out of campus. But then I still had access to school. So because I couldn't go to class, I used to go to the computer lab and I would teach myself how to blog, This is 2011, 2012. Twitter was still kind of new here in Kenya. So guys were just, sort of trying to, get their way around it. People had just started blogging more seriously here. I opened like 5 blogs. I had so much to say, much to say. But then it is in this period that I met the other co-founder who we began Fatuma's Voice with. And because I was part of these Facebook poets groups, that I would post my poems at Nini, and it's in one of those interactions that he approached me because he was a founder of one of the Facebook poet groups, and I used to post like a poem every single day, and so I think he noticed that consistency, and he reached out like, yo, I think we could work together. I have these ideas. So we meet up and we start organizing poetry events in Nairobi. And at the time, we didn't have a name. We didn't even have a direction of what we were doing, but we knew, there is a market and there are young people who want to express themselves like we did. And so we created space. And then in 2013, an activist called Boniface Mwangi, who was operating an art space somewhere in Nairobi, reached out to us. By the time we had like 50,000 Facebook group members, like there were so many people. And we were like, we need a physical space to do this stuff. And Boniface told us, you guys could come here and do your poetry every week. It looked like so much work, and yet the demand was there. So we just leaped into it, and now, how do we find a name? How do we find a name for what we want to do, right? And so the name Fatuma, which is a pretty popular name in Swahili spaces or Swahili countries, and it's also Muslim for most parts. So my co-founder friend was living in a Muslim-dominated street, and it is somewhere called Isli. And he used to pass by this lady who used to beg for money on the road. And by those years, I think what Google was saying was that an average woman speaks around 8,000 words per day, if I'm not wrong. That's what Google said, not me. Thanks. Okay. And so we formulated a story around that. We said, what if this lady, so from Fatuma, the lady who was begging, if she was born dumb and she never said a word in her life, and yet on average, a woman would speak 8,000 words per day. What if this woman was 50 years old and we were mirroring 50 years with the 50 years of independence of Kenya at the time? And you were like, if she hasn't spoken for all these years, then she has millions of words to say. So we want to bring poets to speak for Fatuma. We want to bring artists, we want to bring engineers and lawyers and all these people. And the metaphor was that there's always something you can stand for. From where you come from, there's something you can stand for. There's something you can change, and so that voice you can speak up, and also speak up for other people who are afraid or they don't have the structural strength to do what you can do and stuff like that. And because we had the background of poetry and music, it was really easy to incorporate that because young people really liked it. But what we didn't know it was doing is, like, because it was happening every Friday evening, like, people would tell us, you know what, I used to go and over drink during my Friday evenings, but now I have a place to come and be with people and actually learn something, you know? And again, most of us grew up in very conservative homes where our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings were never really validated. We never really had space to express ourselves. And that's the kind of environment we were creating for many of us young people. And they liked it that the founders weren't old folks. We were just people who looked like them. So very relatable. Our language was really very similar. And then it was also providing a platform for artists who are just starting out with their lives. You know, like, that was like pretty much the history.
Wow, that's impressive. And when you think of some of the challenges that you faced also with Fatuma's voice, can you share with us some of those, and what also has been the response to, I mean, you've mentioned a little bit the response, especially from the perspective of the people who were part of the community of Fatuma's voice, but beyond that, what has also been the response? Yeah, so the challenges and also the responses that you've also gotten. Yeah.
So when we were beginning, you know, we were really just passionate. We wanted to create a community for, like, young people who had a lot to say, had a lot to express, and they hadn't gotten those chances. And then you know, it needed some kind of structure, you know. I didn't have a background for developing structures. I was an artist, you know. Put me on a stage, I would recite a poem. I don't know how to do structures. I didn't go to school for that, you know. So all of a sudden I was just working with the experience I had over the years, because I'd been in, like, school leaderships and all that. So I had an idea of what to do with organizing, you know, especially organizing people. Like, I had an idea. And so we get to a point, and the Danish embassy approaches us, and they're like, you guys are doing a good thing. We want to upscale your program. So they tell us, we want you to go to Nairobi, to Kisumu County, to Nakuru County, to Mombasa County, which is like different towns in Kenya now, apart from Nairobi. And then they ask us, so show us your organizational structure. Oh my word. And we are just blank, like, what the heck is an organizational structure? We don't know what that is, you know, but we are running a program and it's every week and people are coming and it's a full house, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, we document everything. It's there. You can see something is going on, but the structure, like, we can't articulate it. Okay. And I think because of the way we were really passionate, they were like, we'll still give you money, but, you know, you need to get these things together, you know. But that was the hard part, because even with the financial management, again, that was part of the other bigger issue, because we really under budgeted for the programs, you know. The money, they told us to do a budget. We didn't think of paying ourselves. We were just running on passion and gas, you know, because we just wanted people to come together. And we were like, oh, if we go to Nakuru, we just need transport and accommodation. That's all. That's all. I mean, you know, like, that was all. And so the innocence and naivety, you know, sort of cost us so much energy, because in the end, there was a lot of burnout. And with burnout came wrangles within the team. And, you know, when people get tired, you stop seeing one another because now you want to be selfish. You want to think about yourself because you're exhausted, you're fatigued, you know. And that was not easy at all, because whilst the impact was really big on the people who were coming, us on the inside, we were really having a hard time because the work had expanded. But in terms of what was coming back to us to make us feel comfortable, it was very little or nothing, you know. So, and then we also had to use monies to buy gadgets, and we didn't even budget for gadgets, you know, because we were using social media a lot to, you know, disseminate our events and programs and all that. You know, we got into a lot of trouble with the embassy because they were like, yeah, we gave you money for this, you didn't say you needed that, you know. And so of course in the end, you know, some of those things bring tension and all that. But for me, it was like just a learning experience, especially for young organizations that, you know, are into social change, but nobody taught you how to develop a program. Nobody taught you that, but you know what you want to do. So, you know, the loopholes and the gaps in those kind of trainings are some of the things that I'm very passionate about today, because I never want younger people to make the same mistakes. In terms of response, you know, to date, people still say, you know what, my life changed when I started coming to Fatuma's Voice. You know, people became business associates from there. Some people even got married, man, the lucky ones. We created communities that still exist to this day because the WhatsApp groups are still there. People are still talking about, especially like today, it's an election year in Kenya, you know, like they're very active, Mombasa, Nakuru, Nairobi. COVID brought about a lot of disintegration, so we stopped with the physical events. So now we also had to learn about fundraising. Nobody taught us about like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So you have the ideas, but then you need the machinery to articulate the ideas to make them come into fruition. But if you don't have the proper workmanship around you and the skills and the techniques, then your passion becomes labor, and then it stops being fun.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's really exciting to hear, and just to hear the passion and, you know, and sort of the challenges, like sort of reality also coming in, and then it's like, okay, real talk now. There's some things that we actually have to put into place if we're going to continue running business. There's a lot of interesting questions which have been posted in the chat, and thank you everyone. I'm going to start with Oswald. And he says to you, Rix, that he's very touched by the story of your name, Onyango. And he wants to know, what traditional values or knowledge from African communities do you emphasize to support men's healing and transcending patriarchy?
Right. So if you look at many indigenous cultures, their homes were circular. Yeah? A lot of indigenous cultures, their homes are circular. And in many African homes, again, the villages exist within, the compound is circular as well. You know, like there's a heart. And then inside the houses, people sit facing one another because the house is round, right? You face one another. And, you know, without us knowing, it's a subconscious thing. It means we are bringing our energy to the center. When we are looking at each other and we are facing, you know, it means there's that, you know. And that is one almost natural philosophy of what we call Ubuntu, that is like togetherness, a humanity that you know, my work is centered on, especially with African men. The way we are socialized and conditioned is we are competitors of one another because of classism and because we are told our bodies are meant for labor, you know? So if from 15, 16, there was some research work done a while ago that said when boys are younger, they're very close to one another. very close to one another, you know. They hold hands, they hug, they do all these kind of things. And then because you're living in a very heteronormative world, you get to 15, 16, and then you're noticing girls. And then because of now you're starting to really look at your fathers properly as the adult male they are, and you want to be like them, you start emulating what's going on around you with them. You know, what you're seeing adult male are doing around you. And what were we seeing? We were seeing that you have to compete for women, for girls. You have to be cool in a certain way. Your voice has to be deep in a certain way. Your body has to be looking in a certain way. You have to be wearing certain clothes. There are particular shoes. Do you know like how the emphasis men have on shoes? It's insane. You know, like your shoes are your game. So man, you have to, you'd rather have tattered clothes, but your shoes have to be together, you know? So it's crazy, and it's a crazy conditioning. So people start competing from teenage life going up, and then now, you know, boys like you start feeling like now you start separating, right? And then you get into your 20s, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're looking for work. Oh, there are relationships to go through. You're really broken inside. You don't know who you are, but you're responding. You're only responding and reacting to your environment because of how you are brought up, because of what's happening around you. So there is lots of internal disintegration and external disintegration. Internal disintegration of you and yourself, your senses are disintegrated, and then the disintegration you have with the boys around you. So that one of the biggest African traditions that I really preach, if I would call that, in my sessions is we have to go back home to the circular houses and sit round and really look into each other's faces and bring our energies back to the center and say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm not afraid. This is who I am. I'm not afraid. Another person says that this is who I am. I'm not afraid, because your identity is not shamed anymore. We are not here to shame your identity. And even if you don't know who you are, by this, just the fact that you are here with us, it is valid. Your existence is valid. And it actually, that community is what will even help you know who you are, because the community is caring, the community is patient, the community holds space for you, because without that healing, it's almost like a tree that was once in a nursery tree. If it wasn't given the proper environment to, you know, to be nurtured, it would die. And that's what's happening to many men. They don't have the proper environment, so they die at the nursery, and their bodies just become adults, but they're dead children inside, wounded children inside. And that's what I'm trying to go back to. We have to go back and wake up that kid. I was like, yo, how you doing, man? You know? So yeah, Ubuntu. Long answer, but I hope I got home.
Oswald, yeah, I think you're following. Yeah, Rix, going back to the development sector, there's an interesting question by Louise, and she says the lifeblood of a lot of aid work is emails, you know. Oh, yeah, I hear you, Louise. How do you think we can nurture empathy and connection within the restraints of dialogues which by necessity may be restricted to emails? You know, do you have any
Right.
tricks as a communicator in how we can
Ooh,
look after ourselves, especially in how we communicate with others? Yeah.
yeah, man, you know, a little background about that, about my answer is I saw my parents, like the kind of arguments they were having. They really were never communicating to each other. There was always distance and space. And I was like, I can hear what mom is saying. I can hear what dad is saying. How come they're not seeing really meeting? What is it? Where's the disconnect? You know? And so I said, when I grow up, I want to learn how to communicate myself to the best of my ability in a way that the person on the other side will understand me in the simplest form possible, right? One of the biggest challenges, you know, now you grow up, and then because they taught us how to write letters and compositions and you know, grammar school and all that. They never taught us how to write an email. I was never taught how to write an email. I mean, I had to Google that stuff, you know, like you're growing up and then you have to have an email address because you're looking for work, you know, they ask you for an email address. You've never used it before. There's nobody who email things, you know. So, and then now all of a sudden there is formal language and there is informal language, you know, and now you have to figure out your way around that. But in between formality and informality, I think there is a space, there is something we lose in between there. That empathy sometimes is lost in between there. That human connection somewhere, you know, because Joanne, I'm writing you a serious email, even the way I'm greeting you is so formal. It's almost like you're actually just saying hi with your face, not your heart.
Yeah.
You're saying, hi, greetings, Joanne. Like, it's just, dear Joanne, blah, 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 warm regards. Really? You know? So, and then I go through my day and then the next email, same template. What do you think that does to you if you've written 1,000 emails that sound the same? What does it do to you, right? And so I am never ashamed of using emojis in my emails. I'm never ashamed of just actually asking somebody like, how are you really doing? How does this email really find you? You know, because it doesn't hurt. I mean, yeah, they have to go through a whole contract for sure that is attached to the email, but you know, somebody just needs to feel like this person actually cares. They see me. I'm here. I'm not just another machine they're sending an email to. I am a human being they're connecting to. And I think also because of the extremities of relationships that we live in. So, you know, like at the workplace, everything is compact and you have to behave this way. And so, you know, anything outside it might mean that you're being flirtatious or, you know, we are so anxious. And, you know, that actually just communicates to the tension that our societies are living in. And that is the thing we are missing. We are missing the tension. We are concentrating on the language and how to communicate it. We are missing the tension. So the tension remains because nobody's paying attention to it. All right. So we have to ask, like, how do I unloosen this tension by just being friendly with my languaging, you know? And so thank God, you know, emojis exist today, 21st century. We are really lucky people, you know, we can sort of just make the other person feel like, oh, it's not, I'm not too serious after all. I'm smiling at you, you know. And then there is just that essence of respect as well. So I think a lot of the work needs to go into how do I communicate respectfully and yet in an easygoing way, even though we are still working. Because Joanne, life is hard everywhere. Life is so hard everywhere. Emails don't have to, man.
Wow. I saw a lot of heads nodding. I saw Louise, Jennifer, Tanya, and I'm sure the rest, even though the videos are off, I think there's a lot of resonance with what you just said. I can see it's just 4 minutes before, you know, the top of the hour, and I just want to tell anyone who has to leave right now, you know, you're welcome to continue staying, but if you have to leave, then it's totally understandable. But we'll continue the conversation with Rix for the time that he has. Rix, I hope you don't have to leave immediately.
I have time. I've
Oh.
waited for this long.
Oh, this is great. It's amazing. There's one question from Aniela, and it's actually on empathy. And she says that she agrees with you on the importance of empathy, and she finds it interesting when you say that empathy is a skill, because she's been looking at it as something that one has it or does not have it. So she's asking, how do you acquire empathy to make people aware to become more empathetic? Yeah.
Great question. You know, a lot of these things I'm also figuring them out. But I think what has worked for me is I imagine the kind of environment I want to live in. So that means I communicate the way I also want to be communicated to, gently, caringly, you know, with some kind of awareness about how I want to be treated, you know. And so if it starts with me, then people see that, because the funny thing about human beings is we never stop being children. A child learns from the adults around them. Then they just repeat, they repeat, they repeat. And so as human beings, you're always responding to that higher emotion, higher energy, you know, and this higher energy is more uniting. It is, it has light, it has some kind of stability, some strength, you know, and some of us confuse it with authority, you know, we confuse it with authority. So when you're a child, it is everything jumbled up together in an adult, yeah. And so the point behind that is our brains, the patterns we pick up are about what's repeating itself in the environment we are in. What's repeating itself, that's what we pick up as human beings. And so I say, I need to repeat showing empathy to people around me, to repeat and repeat in my communications. If you look at my tweets, if you look at my Instagram posts, if you look at my Facebook posts, everywhere I am, there is a very certain essence of my communication. You can sense it. And I'm very intentional about it, Joanne. Like, it's something so intentional because I've sat down and I've imagined, how does the 5-year-old within me want to be spoken to? Because we are emotional beings. That's how we operate through this world. Yeah. So you master the skill by understanding the emotion. When you understand the emotion, then you can say, oh, these are Louise's needs. These are Tanya's needs. These are Joanne's needs. This is how Louise likes to be talked to. Then it means I will be more attentive. And there is no way I can pay more attention to Tanya if I'm not paying more attention to myself, to understand even the kind of language I can use. So that is just one piece of it. I think there is more. And I think also part of it is in the other relationships we are having off work, which are very, very important, you know, because I've seen this work over and over, how, you know, people have come to the office and there is office culture, all right, and about how people need to go about work and reporting and all that. But if I have been battered by my wife or my husband or my partner and I'm going to work, I'm applying all this makeup because I don't want anybody to know. There is no space for that. I have to show, you know, there is a 1971 video about James Baldwin. I don't know if you've heard of, you know, James Baldwin. James Baldwin was sitting down with American poet Nikki Giovanni, amazing lady, and she was way much younger than James Baldwin at the time. 1971. It was a recording done in London, UK. You can check it out on YouTube. It's like a 2-hour show broken apart, 1 hour, 1 hour. And James was asking, Nikki Giovanni is asking James Baldwin, yo, how come Black men are really violent to Black women, even though we're in the same struggle? And James is saying, you know, when that Black man goes to work to meet his master, he has to pretend to smile the whole day. He's pretending to smile the whole day, smiling at this master the whole day. He's smiling. So when he comes back home, his body collapses, his anger comes back, everything comes back. And who is the first victim of that anger? The person he loves most, you know? So it's a very complex thing. And for me, I'm like, we need to create more workspaces where people don't have to come with, you know, put up faces, because that's what's killing us. It kills everything. Your dignity, it kills your own empathy, it kills your productivity, it kills everything. And many of us are really overworked. Even in the aid field, we are really, really overworked. It's not sustainable. So for me, I just feel like it's time that we don't just reimagine a different way of relating to one another, we need to institutionalize it, you know, so that it could be easy to navigate almost automatically, that kindness is something that is just there, that empathy is something that is just there. Like, I know I will get it. I'm not anxious. Will I, if I move workplaces, will I find the same kindness I got here or not? You know, so yeah, that's what I'd say.
Wow. On that note, wow, that is it's a very high note to end the conversation on. And unless there are other questions, I'm looking around, but it seems like there are no other questions. I think, Rix, like what you have said, you have really taken us in the direction of recognizing the importance of the healing work that also has to be done in the sector. And you've pinpointed very clearly the areas where, you know, some of the areas where the work really has to be done. And I'm very grateful that you've touched on that. You know, I was going to ask you, you know, other questions about communicators and all, but I feel like, you know, when you talked about empathy and connection, for me, that's also the space where communicators, you know, from the majority countries and from the minority countries, they actually need to meet together so that we can do this work of ushering change together. That, you know, in as much as we're operating, you know, in racist structures, but there is that space where we can meet together. And Roma Richardson actually says a lot of gems were dropped in this conversation. So thank you so much, Rix. Aniela says thank you so much as well. We're so grateful to have had you here for this short period of time. Yes, the conversation continues. Rix is reachable on Twitter. He's on Instagram, and he's very approachable. As you can, I mean, I got to know him online. So really, like, the level of humility I've seen, you know, against the work that he's doing is extremely admirable. So feel free to reach out to him. Our next Global Dev Communicators Connect is going to happen on the 13th of April. So if you have any ideas for us, Rix, if you have any ideas, suggestions, please feel free to reach out. We'd love also to hear from you. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
You want to press stop record?
Yeah, good idea.